precious name of Jesus, wherever you view this Choices program, we want to welcome you. And our prayers are that the blessings of God will be bestowed upon your life. Stay tuned. God bless you.
You know, it's God's will that every family expand. This cannot happen if you have a man mentality. You know, man involves living from day to day. But this is not how God, this is not God's desire for us to live. God's desire is for us to live in superabundance, to have plenty.
Yeah.
This means that if we're going to progress, we have to throw away the man mentality and think generationally. You know, some people just think for today, but you have to think generationally. Israel, for that matter, walked around in the desert for 40 years eating the same thing because they were not thinking progressively. And so, if you have this mentality, it serves to constrict you and put you in a regressive mode. Therefore, this evening we want to examine the family as it relates to this mentality. Gentlemen.
Perhaps it's important that we establish the scriptural basis for discussion. Exodus chapter 16, this describes the introduction of manna. The whole Israelite community, reading from verse 1, set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." The beginning of manna from heaven. It's interesting how this started. God delivered Israel out of Egypt, and just not even 2 months into the second month, 15 years into the second month, they started complaining because they figured that life, while in bondage, life was better because their master had the duty and the headache of providing for them. And even though they were moving towards their freedom, they then thought, it's best we go back, because we will, if we stay here, we would not have enough to eat. I'm sure these 6 million people, minimum, on this march, they had supplies to last them. If they obeyed the instructions that were given to them about the exit strategy, they would have had a minimum supply of about 6 months to a year. But when you have this manna mentality, you're really set for destruction, and for a lot of a waste of time, a waste of human effort, a waste of energy, a destruction of potential and talent. So this is the setting here. They started complaining. They wanted to go back to the flesh pots of Egypt.
And you know, that is what the mentality does for you, you know. They spent all these years in Egypt. They were reduced to less than servants. And in spite of their lowly estate, they still preferred to be there rather than use the opportunity God had given them to be free, to become responsible, and to charter their destiny with the help of God. So the manna mentality not only reduces one physical ability, but more importantly, once it affects the mind, it causes one to lose the God-given ability to be creative, to be optimistic, and to use the initiative that God has given to you to really develop oneself. So it was quick for them to return to what they were receiving in Egypt rather than utilize the opportunity they were given here. So the manna mentality really retards an individual. One is accustomed to receiving, stretching out their hands and all of that. And even if we look carefully, when manna came, they had to retrieve the manna early in the morning, because if they waited late, the manna melted. Yeah. So God was teaching them there. I mean, we know the old adage, early to bed, early to rise, make a man healthy. But God was teaching them a work ethic here that they choose not to follow.
When I look at the manner in the way how the Israelites operate, it reminds me about the animals. If you have an animal from small locked away and you keep feeding it all the time, there's no time that when you lose the animal that he would go and look for a prey, because his skills to kill a next animal move away, because remember, everything free coming to him. And when he go out there to look now to kill an animal, no, he would turn back and come right back into the camp. You would have to take him back again, steady, just to get him to, get accustomed to.
Yeah. Anytime God is getting ready to do anything new in your life, the first thing he will target is your mind. The word of God says in Proverbs chapter 23, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. It also says in Romans that we should not be conformed to this world, but we should be transformed by the renewing of your mind. God had a plan for the children of Israel. He wanted to take them into superabundance. But, we cannot benefit from the superabundance of God with a mentality that is less than that. You have to have the mentality equal to the promises that he wants to bring us into. That's the only way we'll be able to really move forward.
I think there's a great lesson in this for us. I mean, I want to speak to parents this morning from this same scenario. So many times, parents can be held responsible for the actions of their offspring. And we have to bring them to that place where they can understand there will be a cut-off time. This season of dependency will stop at some time. And so we have to prepare them. And from this lesson, we saw how God did it. They had a responsibility of awakening early in the morning in order to gather what was needed. And the instruction was just to gather enough for today, not to store up for another day. Obedience is another critical area here. We have to learn to be obedient to God and to those that are placing authority over us. We must follow the instructions that in order to benefit and so that we can progress. We can't just think about today, we got to think about tomorrow and further down the road. And so this whole thing about being responsible in our actions, in the way we think, so that we can benefit and those after us can benefit also.
The word responsibility reminds me of a seminar I attended, and the theme song of that seminar was on responsibility. And it goes something like this: we take responsibility, we found freedom's key, we walk away from the past. This freedom will last as we take responsibility. So, you see here, we have to take it. The responsibility for our lives is something for us to possess. We have to take hold of that responsibility. We cannot go back like the children of Israel, thinking about the past. Oh, things were so good in Egypt. They were in slavery, and they were calling that good. That is the result of a damaged mentality as a result from dependency on manna.
I thought my brother would have sung the song,
Thank God for poetry.
But it is all in the way we see it, Lots of times the way we behave is the way we think. And while freedom is good, freedom comes with a level of responsibility, a level of accountability. And clearly, we see here that the children of Israel, their mindset was completely messed up. Somehow, somewhere along the line, they just saw freedom, but not becoming responsible. Whatever God does in our life, God empowers us to become responsible. Every stage of our life He's moving us onto, it's a level of responsibility that He will require. And so we don't have to become completely dependent on other people, dependent on God. But He is going to give us the skills, the tools, the aptitude necessary to succeed. I remember Joshua chapter 1. And every minute as he was moving them into this new promise, every minute he said to Joshua, be strong and very courageous. Be strong and very courageous. And so if you and I will for us to get rid of that man mentality, I say to us, be strong and very courageous.
You know, I think discipline is so important in this whole aspect too, if we're going to progress. And you know, there are some persons who believe that by gathering stuff that did not come from them, and they could gather up stuff and put up, and believe that will cause them to suffice. But that will not help. You can't just put up, gather up people's stuff and intend to survive on that. You have to draw from a reservoir where you could actually create your own. If you use your initiative and your creativity, for example, you will move into the realm of superabundance, because the ideas, you know, and the ideas will be coming from you. And as those ideas in terms of how you could prosper and develop come from you, you could always draw from that resources. You know, some people, for example, you go, and you see it all the time, sometimes you go to a function, you see people got a bag and they're gathering stuff and putting up stuff, thinking that will expire. So you have to have, the resources must come from you, and the only way that is possible is if you put your faith and your trust in God and follow what God says.
You know,
that is so critical and essential.
Mentality. You know, the man mentality is bondage, really. And, you know, bondage causes you to lose your identity. You know, so we have to take responsibility. We have to have a paradigm shift. We have to carve a new niche for our future. And it starts with us. It starts with taking responsibility.
That is so critical and essential. You know, as we look at the children of Israel being dependent upon the Egyptians for a period of time, and as they came into that place of freedom, God was taking them into freedom. They still had this mindset to receive from people without even thinking, well, we can do it for ourselves. And sometimes, you know, the word of God says in Romans 12, be not conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It has so much to do with the way you think, the way you see things. We have to think outside of the box, because many times we are confined to this box mentality where we think that if this person doesn't do it for me, I cannot succeed. We have got to see it different.
So it brings us to the place where we must recognize who is